Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's installment of Penning the Past, Insights into San Diego's Historic Neighborhoods and Architecture. I'm Dean Glass, and today we are honored to have with us a distinguished guest, Dr. Thomas J. Cesarini, who will be sharing his expertise on the fascinating history of San Diego's Little Italy. Tom is a well-respected academic, a nonprofit leader, and a passionate advocate for preservation of Italian culture in San Diego. He holds a PhD in leadership studies and a master's degree in nonprofit leadership and management, both from the University of San Diego. In 2006, he founded the Italian Historical Society of San Diego with a mission to create a comprehensive cultural center and museum dedicated to Italian heritage. Through his work with Convivio, a nonprofit focused on Italian humanities, Tom has spearheaded countless efforts to preserve and celebrate Italian culture in the region. His dedication to the Italian community was further recognized in 2019 when he was appointed as the Italian Honorary Consul of San Diego. Today, Tom will guide us through the captivating story of Little Italy's transformation, from its early days as a bustling fishing village and tight-knit immigrant enclave in the early 1900s to the chic urban neighborhood it has become today. He will illuminate the lives, struggles, and triumphs of the Italian families who made this neighborhood their home, giving us a deeper understanding of how their traditions, labor, and community shaped this iconic part of San Diego. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Tom Cesarini.
Great. Thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. First and foremost, thank you to Dean, Janet, everyone at Soho for this wonderful invitation, for the privilege of letting me participate and present to you. A little bit about the authors of the book, San Diego's Little Italy, which we'll be discussing today. Unfortunately, my co-author, Dr. Kim Quinney, could not be here today, but I want to talk a little bit about her. She's a professor of history at Cal State San Marcos, and her research and her studies were on World War II and U.S. foreign policy in Italy and the Cold War, all of that good stuff. Great research, great studies. And I met her. She was doing discussions around town, and I was doing some things with my nonprofit that I'd founded. And we met. I reached out to her, and we started to chat about our visions and what we like to see in the community and our work. And she mentioned that Arcadia Publishing had approached her about doing a book on Little Italy. And she asked if I would kind of like to go on the ride along for the ride with her. And I said, great. And that's kind of how the book was born in 2007. And then in 2009, 2 years later, we had another publication that we did with Arcadia, and that was San Diego's fishing industry. Dean did a great job with my background. I'll just merely add that my family hails from Sicily, a small town called Aspra near Palermo, the capital of Sicily. They came here in the 60s and settled in, at the time, was the Italian neighborhood along India Street. So I grew up there for several years until we relocated and we moved to the suburbs. My passion and my interest in all things Italian stemmed from my parents, my upbringing. I didn't know any English and starting grade school. My parents taught me Sicilian and Italian first, and I'm grateful to them for that. That's in stark contrast to a lot of the families that came in the 20s, 30s, 40s, that the parents did not teach their children the Italian because they were sort of leaving the old world behind. They were now in the new world, they were assimilating, and it was important for them to teach English to their children, that they knew the American ways. And among the parents, they often spoke in Italian and their dialects from wherever they came. But with the children, it was always in English. So I'm grateful to my parents for that component. That led me to establish this nonprofit, Convivio, which means uniting, coming together. And really, I was looking at our community. And at the time, Little Italy was being redeveloped, but our cultural heritage was disappearing and rapidly. So I wanted to do something about that and fill in the gaps. And that led me to founding the nonprofit. Today, the way I like to structure this, first let me add, I am Italian, so if at any time my hands eclipse my face, I apologize ahead of time. Hopefully I'll try to refrain from doing it, but I can't make any promises, so thank you for your patience there. The way I want to structure this is I like to talk about the neighborhood in three sections, and I'm going to refer to them by the way they were referred to at the time. So we've got three sections. I'll give you a broad overview, and then we'll cut to some images that I like to show you for each section, and then we'll wrap up with a conclusion on what's happening today in the neighborhood. So essentially, we'll start with the Italian colony, and that were the humble beginnings of the neighborhood. We're looking at the late 1880s with the presence of the first Italians in San Diego. Many of them came for fishing. And the primary regions that the Italians came from were from the north and the south. The north, the region of Liguria, and specifically a small town called Riva Trigoso near Genoa. And in the south, many Sicilian towns, but primarily, originally, initially, Porticello, and also near Palermo, the capital. Those are the two groups really to start coming here again into the first part of the 20th century, 1920s and 1930s. There was a large influx as well. And then many from Western Sicily started to come over. Most of you, I'm sure, know, and I'm hopefully not being repetitive, but at the time, the neighborhood was called Middletown. We had Old Town, of course. We had New Town, Downtown, and we had Middletown, this area that we refer to now as Little Italy. Often relatives were already here, and a practice was to call relatives over once some were already established, and then people would come, start their families, develop a livelihood here, with really fishing being sort of that impetus for people arriving here. As far as fishing goes, now the Chinese and Japanese were already in San Diego fishing. Chinese had junk boats. The Japanese were doing bamboo pole fishing, uh, hook and line type fishing. When the Portuguese started to arrive, and then the Italians as well, almost back to back, and then other ethnic groups filled in and also supported the burgeoning fishing industry. The Italians, the Portuguese added their own innovations. So the Italians brought to the fishing industry use of different kinds of nets, depending on the fish. They started to develop bait boats, small boats, and we'll see some images later on. But something significant happened in 1906. And it wasn't here, it was in San Francisco. And as most of you know, 1906 saw the great earthquake there in the Bay Area and the subsequent fire. So what we see in San Diego is an influx of Italians coming from San Francisco, and where they had already established a flourishing fishing industry, moved to San Diego to set up shop here. And of course, they settled along the waterfront, which was much closer than it is now, of course. And with that development of that neighborhood, we see important institutions arising. Primarily, we had three. We had Our Lady of the Rosary Parish, and we had Washington Elementary School, and then Bayside Social Center. And we'll show you some images of those and talk about those as well. But those form this sort of cultural heritage triangle in the neighborhood, within blocks of each other, just a few blocks. And so they formed, as one resident put it in the past, that was helped to form his moral compass. The school, the church, and Bayside Social Center, where kids would go after school. So that was sort of the beginning of the Italian colony. And so what I like to do now is go to some slides and show you some images, and we can see some of how it was back then. So again, bear with me here. I'm going to do this share screen. And we shall go to, here we go. Okay. Thank you for your patience here. And I think that's good. So here are two books. The first, of course, San Diego's Little Italy. The second, 2 years later, San Diego's Fishing Industry. Um, and as far as the Italian colony goes, again, these were the humble beginnings, very auspicious beginnings of the neighborhood, late 1880s, going into the first part of the 20th century. Here's an image of the Cristoforo Colombo. And this was a ship that brought many Italians over. Often this was a 2-week journey crossing the Atlantic. My family came on the Constitution, which is another ship. And this was typical for back in the day. This is an image of the Andrea Doria. And this was a year before it sank, if you remember that story when it collided with the Stockholm. My uncle was on this ship crossing over. He's in the type corner. There's a tall man with his head peeking out, top right quadrant, if you can see it. This is just a great image of people coming over, crossing over on that liner at the time. It was a beautiful ship, the Andrea Doria. And it's, of course, a tragic story that goes along with it. This is an image of a wedding, early teen, 1917, I believe, the Cornelia and Marlene family. This family eventually settled, and their home was where, if you're familiar with the neighborhood, where Cafe Italia is now, right underneath the Little Italy sign. That's where their home used to be. And we're going to see an image of one of their daughters later on. But again, a typical wedding photo back in the day, very classic, showing you a glimpse of the dress and the demeanor and everything, all the attendant trappings that go with that, and sort of the philosophy, and they're coming over to this country very, very dignified. This is an image of the Star of Holland crew. Again, I think 1917. Star of Holland was a sister ship to the Star of India, our beloved Star of India. And this was when they were going to fish in Alaska. There's an early picture of early fishing on that ship. Made a lot of trips up there. The Alaska Packers Association was very well known. And these are, I believe, the Zalesi family, individuals from the Zalesi family, a very prominent name in the fishing industry here locally. And there's a typical bait boat, the Galileo, from the 30s. The people on board, very small. They would use nets and go out for fish. You can see the city in the background, the cityscape. And I love images of these types of boats. We have many, but these are just great, great images of fishing, the start of the fishing, especially with the Italians. And then, of course, fishing was a family affair. So while the men were out fishing, the women would often be helping with, weaving the nets, mending the nets, stretching the nets, dyeing the nets at home. And here's an image, again, early on, of women doing exactly that, and how they would lay the nets out to help with that work. And the kids would often be involved as well, helping that too. Of course, moving into the later decades, the canneries started to flourish along our waterfront. And here you see an image of some of the women working the canneries, packing tuna. When tuna became big, originally fishing was for sardines, rock cod, and mackerel. When tuna was discovered, the industry really, really flourished and blossomed. And so it became all about tuna. And that's when I mentioned the canneries started to pop up. All on the waterfront, you'd see the boats coming in. You'd see canneries down in Barrio Logan. And San Diego, rightfully so, was dubbed the tuna capital of the world for all these reasons. And it really helped to sustain a livelihood for so many groups and so many people. I love this image. This is a typical backyard brick oven. Often the residents would make their own bread. And this was done in Barrio Logan, though. And it's just a great image from the 30s. It just really stands out. And then subsequently, you have another great image, very whimsical, of the women eating fresh bread from their ovens, same time period. And then the Cheris Washington School, early in the decade. And as you can see, the Washington School was modeled after the White House. It was in stature and scope, it was just magnificent. You can see marble steps going up here and the pillars. It was fantastic. Had a gymnasium on the bottom floor, playground next door. But this was the school for the neighborhood kids, got their education here. It still stands today. It still serves the community. Unfortunately, they knocked it down in the 80s due to some retrofitting issues and earthquake preparedness. And it's really sad that they had to, demolish it and rebuild it. But it was a beautiful, beautiful school. That's one of the 3 institutions that was of prime importance to the neighborhood. This is a playground right next to it, right next to the school. Again, you can see the cityscape behind it, children playing. And then our church, Our Lady of the Rosary, was really the anchor, and still to this day served as the anchor for Little Italy. This is Father Rabaliati, and in 23 he established the church. He was the original pastor of the church. And this is Father Rabaliati with, with the communion class of 1926 in front of the steps to the church. Again, if you're familiar with the neighborhood down there. Again, great image showing 1926 and the church exterior. And then in the 40s, we had Father Palola after Father Rabaliati passed away. And he inherited, unfortunately, the church debt. So the church was established in 23, dedicated in 1925. And Father Palolo was instrumental in building the parish hall right next door. But the importance here with the community and Father Palolo was that the community, the fishermen, banded together and dedicated a portion of their income to help pay for the church debt. So they paid it off with Father Palolo's leadership. He was a great leader in the 40s. And then into the 50s and 60s, we have Monsignor Trevisano. And Monsignor Trevisano was in touch with the Hollywood elite. He had the connections. So he would throw lavish fundraising parties at the time at our Hel Cortez Hotel, invite Hollywood celebrities to come down. I think Danny Thomas hosted one Italian fair that they had in the 50s. Another great leader for our community and for the parish. And then here's a typical image of Tate's meat market, so a retail establishment. Tate's was very well known in the neighborhood, the butcher shop here on India Street. So it wasn't just about fishing. The retail outlets started to open up. You had butchers, you had the bakers, you had the shoe repair. There was even a theater in Little Italy, different kinds of shops, certainly grocery stores, many of them. And so again, the neighborhood was becoming self-sufficient. It was very insular. Everyone knew each other. And it really, really started to develop around that mid part of the decade. I think, and one more, Bayside. Bayside Social Center is the third institution that's really important. And this is where the kids would go after school. So this was run by the nuns. And it's located to where our space is right now, near the Little Italy Dog Park, just one block up on Date Street from Our Lady of the Rosary Parish. And they would have camps and they would do after school activities. They would teach English, they would do dances, you name it, they did it. And it was really a place for the children to go, be safe. The parents knew where they were and learn whatever they needed to learn and socialize with others. Bayside now is in Linda Vista, and they're doing great work, and we're collaborating with them on events down in Little Italy. They since relocated. I think they were in City Heights, and then now they're in Linda Vista, and doing phenomenal job work for the community up there. So between the school, the church, and Bayside, you have those three institutions, again, quoting that former resident, that form the moral compass for this neighborhood. And now we're going to go into the Italian neighborhood. And that brings us into wartime in the 50s and the 60s. And I'll stop sharing screen for now. I can get up here again. Let me do that. There we go. Thanks for your patience. So we start with the Italian colony, and that's what it was known. Essentially a colony from the old world, a sort of outpost where the new immigrants were coming to. But now in the 40s and 50s, wartime, 50s, 60s, it's the neighborhood. It's the Italian neighborhood. It's bustling. All kinds of things are happening. The tuna capital of the world is going in full force. The retail outlets are working. There's seafood markets as well are popping up. And it's really the heyday of the neighborhood in terms of when the most families lived there. And it was at sort of its peak, if you will. And I'd like to talk about wartime a little bit because that was an interesting time period for the neighborhood. The Italians at the time, and the irony is many Italian Americans were overseas fighting in the war effort, but they were also branded enemy aliens. And we all know about the Japanese internment camps and the tragedy that the Japanese went through. Many of the Italians were also sent to internment camps, although not as great in numbers. But here locally, there were curfews imposed. Government came in, they confiscated any kind of ham radios that the Italian residents had. There'd be air raids. Of course, the warden would walk up and down the street at nighttime. There was a lot of activity during wartime, so it wasn't a particularly great time for the neighborhood. But fishing was still booming. But then what happened with fishing during wartime is that the government requisitioned the fishing boats. So they took all the boats and they sent them to for the war effort and to the South Pacific. And they would use them to patrol the waters, and they were called yard patrol boats or YP boats, colloquially yippie boats. Now the fishermen would eventually get the boats back, but that was all going on during wartime. That said, life was still going on. The kids were, of course, growing up, attending school, church, Bayside. A lot of life in the neighborhood during this time was the kids would play in empty lots. They'd go down to Lane Field downtown where the San Diego Padres were playing of the Pacific Coast League, try to sneak in, or if they could get a nickel somewhere to pay for the ticket. They would build coasters and scooters and go down the hills. It was a great time growing up as we talked to a lot of residents that were there at the time, and they really cherished those memories. Not so much, of course, of wartime, but certainly after that, growing up in the neighborhood really shaped who they were. And that's a refrain that we hear quite a bit from talking to some of the people there. They'd go to Coronado, they'd go to the beach, they'd go downtown just a few blocks away, go visit the stores there. And then when the church hall was established in the late 30s and into the 40s, of course, there were events and activities there. So just a great time for the neighborhood. Then, of course, you have the decline. And there were several components to the decline of the neighborhood, prime of which was the decline of the fishing industry going into the 70s and then into the 80s. And what happened was government regulations, environmental issues, and then cheaper imports on the tuna kind of saw the sort of the demise of the neighborhood. That was the beginning of the end for the fishing industry in San Diego. We still have fishing, but it's largely sports fishing now, of course. So whereas, in the 40s and 50s and 60s, you'd walk down to the harbor and you'd see just ships everywhere, and you'd see all the activity of unloading the fish, unloading the tuna, and then going further down, you'd see all the activity with the canneries. Now everything is starting to die down. And the other factor was the freeway coming in. So the I-5, the freeway came and cut right through the neighborhood because the neighborhood extended further east, was much, much larger in scope. And when the freeway came in the mid 60s, it really just dissected the neighborhood right in half, and many residents were dislocated, had to relocate, were displaced, and that was another reason. So between the fishing industry declining and the freeway coming in, and of course a lot of people moving to the suburbs, starting to move to the suburbs anyway, we see the decline of the neighborhood, and it basically disappeared. Late 70s into the 80s, and all we really had left there were some important retail markets. We had Filippi's, of course, Pizza Grotto, which cash and carry. It started out as cash and carry. Filippi's Pizza Grotto was there. We had Salunto Bakery, which is our bakery, and we had Mona Lisa Italian Foods. Those are the three prime retailers. And then, of course, the parish was always active. So we always saw everyone return for church activities. And that hasn't changed. It's a much more diverse demographic now, but the church, as I mentioned before, is really still the anchor for the community. And so in the 80s, the neighborhood was Harborview. It was known as Harborview, and that's what happened with that. And so I like to share some images of that time period as well. And again, bear with me here. There we go. Nope, it's going to go all the way up. Nope, it's gonna go. Here we go. So again, the Italian neighborhood, a burgeoning community. And here we see an image of processions, which were very, very important, still are. They still happen to this day at the church, Our Lady of the Rosary. This, as you can see in the background, an image of the county administration building, and the processions would make their way. The religious processions would make their way from the church down to the waterfront and back to finish off with activities and events and celebrations and things of that nature. Here's some other images, also from the 40s. You can see the marchers proudly carrying the American flag, being in their new country. You can see the waterfront in the background, and some of the banners from the societies of the church. An important retailer was Bay City Drugs. Now, this was on the corner, if you're familiar with, again, the neighborhood where Born and Raised Steakhouse is now, that would be India and Fur. This was Bay City Drugs. Very important social space, and of course, pharmacy and store for the neighborhood. A lot of the kids would, of course, hang out here in front of the store. It was just a great place to go. They had the soda fountain, just a classic thing when you think of the drugstore. Classic images come to mind with the soda fountain and all the trappings that go with it. And this is a great image in front of the store too, with the woman with her baby in front on top of the car, um, just highlighting that whole era from the 40s. And when fishing was bad, the men would play bocce ball. This here is an empty lot next to what is now Mona Lisa, so just south of it, right next door. And bocce ball was then and still is now a very popular game. And there are bocce courts down right by our space on Date Street in the dog park, and you can still see people play there pretty much daily. They still play. There's a bocce club. Some are formal, some are more informal, but they still get together and play this classic long game. Over there, it's in the dirt, much like here. This is a great image too, the Conte Verde ship. Celebrations on the ship. This is in the 40s. And on the left-hand side in the top corner, you can see in just a little bit our beloved Star of India right behind it. Great fishing boat, Massa Castagnola families. This iconic image, many of you might have seen this one, just for me, just speaks volumes. You can, so in this one image, you can see the grueling fishing and the dangerous fishing lives that these men would lead in with their bamboo poles, throwing tuna over their shoulders. This was called fishing from the racks, throwing it over into the tank, into the holding tank. And in one image, this represents just so much. And so I wanted to include this image. And again, I'd mentioned just walking along the waterfront. This is along the harbor, ships coming in, the net mending that was going on. So this was very common sight. This is from the 70s. Going into the latter part of the 70s, still, you'd see the ships and the mending and so much hustle and bustle around the fishing industry. And this image, again, a great image from the 40s. And I mentioned that wedding family, the Marlena Cornelia family. This was one of the daughters, Fran. And it's just a great image of her on the car. This is, I think, 42. Again, speaks volumes in so many ways. This is an image of a grandfather holding his toddler, and this is on Hawthorne Street going down. So Mona Lisa now would be right across the street. So this is going west, facing the bay along Hawthorne. I was a pretty cute kid, wouldn't you say? Yes, that's me. That's my grandfather, Pietro. And that is my mom's 64 Ford Mustang, which she no longer has, unfortunately. So a great life really in the neighborhood. And that is the section on the Italian neighborhood, which brings us to today and what's happening now in today's Little Italy. And so I've subtitled this New Horizons. So you saw our publications at the beginning of the presentation. We have the two books. You know, where have our preservation efforts taken us? So in the 80s, as I mentioned, the area was known as Harborview. Now nothing's happening till the early 90s when merchants got together, a group got together and formed the Little Italy Association and really dedicated themselves to revitalizing, redeveloping the neighborhood. And the Little Italy Association was formed early 90s. And developers came in, and again, for most people that have been there, probably hopefully all of you, you've seen the changes and all the development that's going on in the neighborhood today and what's been happening there. As far as preservation goes, as I mentioned, we have our publications, the two books. My dissertation was on Little Italy. I interviewed 8 community members and got their life stories and really wanted to get a sense of what Little Italy today meant for them and in terms of their cultural identity and what it represents. And so that took me into more nonprofit work with the nonprofit I founded. And now we do enclave tours of the neighborhood. We develop digital archives. We have an Italian digital history initiative that we have digital images, documents, oral histories, and we have an Italian American docu-series that we're in production with, moving away from publication a little bit to a film series. And we have our Now and Again for oral history series, and we have a Talk on the Street oral history series. We've also developed a space in the neighborhood. It's Amici House, and again, I mentioned it's in the dog park. It's a little cottage, and it's a typical fishing family home of the day. This particular home was relocated there by the Little Italy Association about 10 years ago. It was just several blocks down the street where the Piazza della Famiglia is now, where the big fountain is. So it got relocated there to preserve it. Our nonprofit took it over, and we operate out of that home. It belonged to the Giacalone family, a big name in the fishing industry here in San Diego. And ultimately now we're moving toward a new space, and our vision has always been to develop a larger cultural center and an Italian American museum. And we're going to do just that, which is also in development. And I wanted to take you on a little journey with images as well here now. Of course, the Little Italy sign, iconic. This was a group of students from New York that came and visited us. So we took them on a tour. They had a really great time. And you can see, of course, the changes in the neighborhood with the new developments, the new buildings, all the restaurants that have come in over the past 30 years, and all the retail components as well. Piazza Basilone on Indian Fur. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. If you've been down there, there's a little piazza. It's a gorgeous piazza maintained by the Little Italy Association. This is in honor of Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, who unfortunately, sadly, tragically killed at Iwo Jima. And he was a Marine at Camp Pendleton. And that's John Basilone. So I wanted to share that with you because the Italian Americans that were part of the war effort, all of them, not just the Italian Americans, but all the groups were so important, of course. And it's good, that there's something to honor him and all the rest of the individuals that went off to war and the ones that didn't come back, unfortunately. And this is our space that I mentioned, Amici House. This is our patio. We have a coffee bar on the patio, and this is the space that we work out of now, right next to the dog park. And our nonprofit does different kinds of events. We're an arts and cultural nonprofit, so we do arts programs, film screenings, music events. We have lectures, presentations. We'll do wine tastings. You name it, we do it. But the heritage preservation focus for us is really a core program. And along those lines, we formed an advisory committee, the Little Italy Heritage Commission, to focus on the heritage and the history of the neighborhood through exhibits, events, and things of that nature, lectures. And we have a committee of about 24, 25 people right now that advises us and really directs us for this particular program. And the church last year, 2023, celebrated its centennial. And here we have a glimpse of this gala event that was held last year. Again, the jewel of Little Italy, it certainly is. That it has been dubbed, and it still serves as the anchor for so many groups still to this day. And I wanted to show this image of the festivities. And now I have some video clips I do want to share with you as well. And this is from our Talk on the Street series, and we have a few on our website. And I just want to give you a glimpse of this, just to see it's one of the things that we're doing.
You know, I remember. You remember coming to church on Sundays?
Yeah, I remember coming to church.
9 o'clock mass.
At least 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Or even earlier.
I remember when we used to come. If you got to church late, Monsignor Traversani would be giving the sermon, and if you came in late, you stood up at the back, and he'd call you by your name. And he'd say, "Get up here, sit down."
Yeah.
Remember that?
I remember that.
Huh?
Yeah.
And I give you one more. I remember like it was yesterday. After mass, every Sunday, you come out of church, and I remember like it was yesterday, walking down this side of the street, and I would think, geez, how lucky I am. I'm a Catholic, and I just came out of church. I don't know if it did any good, but that was a thought in my mind, you know? Then I would smell the zuku, the sauce being cooked. I can hardly wait to get home and go.
Well, you're so much older than me. I remember my grandmother, Filippi, over here in Columbia Street, definitely midnight mass for Christmas, Easter. We couldn't get our Easter gifts or baskets until we went to the church. And we went back and told Grandma, we went to the church. Half the time we never went in the church, but we went to the church. So there's good memories. So many weddings here. So people were married here. And unfortunately, people died and their funeral was here today. So it'd be all these little bungalows over here.
Yeah.
All these little homes. You know, the Italians came here, and this was like a second, it was like the Mediterranean. It was a sister city to like Venice. And so all the fishermen, they found another Little Italy here. Before it was known as Little Italy, then it was Middletown, you know, or Ocean View. But here we are now. There's very few little bungalows left. There's a few here. I remember as a kid watching the fishermen out there in the driveway, you know, doing the nets, sewing the nets, getting the drying anchovies out in their garages. So yeah, the church is the community. And of course, you have more reminiscing because you're an old man.
Well, yeah, they used to have every year the Madonna de Luma parade.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And we used to march all over Little Italy, all over. And they had the statue. And the main event of the parade was the blessing of the boats. Remember, we used to go down to the bay, used to bless, and this thing was loaded with people. Loaded.
Oh, yeah.
And I still have my badge, the Madonna de Luma. My grandfather, Onovio Coelho, he used to always march with the suit on, and he always marched with his head like this.
Yeah.
I got pictures of him still, always with his head marching down. But they all did. It was a big neighborhood.
Oops. Well, I just wanted to show you a little clip of our Talk on the Street series. So those two characters are Lou Palestini and Danny Mocheri, and they were founding members of the Little Italy Association with the redevelopment. And now they're chair and co-chair of our Little Italy Heritage Commission. They grew up there, as you see. Their heart is still in the neighborhood. They're there at our place every Friday with two other members of the neighborhood, two other people that they're friends that they grew up with, and they're having coffee and just reminiscing over old times. So it's really it's something special to see, to witness, to be a part of, and be a small part of sort of preserving the narratives and those stories. Because for me personally, and why I founded the nonprofit and why we do this work is, and I'm preaching to the choir here with Soho, but it's about those individuals. It's about the people that created the neighborhood and toiled to sustain it. And we need to honor that history. Again, preaching to the choir here, so you'll forgive me. So we weren't doing much of that on a grand scale for the Italian community. So that's why we're doing it now. There's one more video that I want to show you, and this is our docu-series. This is what we're working on currently. It's going to be in 5 episodes, and I want to share that with you as well. And this is just a trailer for it. Whoops, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There we go.
It was an adventure that money cannot buy.
I mean, I've always said it to myself. I kept walking down this street, Hawthorne Street, every day, coming to work and looking down at that beautiful bay.
You know, it's just really touching to know that people came from difficult situations, loss, of war, of famine, of all kinds of strife, and they came here for a new life. And I think when people came to San Diego eventually, when they arrived here, and they found their faith in the opportunity of building a new church, and that to me was tantamount to what it really meant to be an immigrant, an Italian immigrant in this community.
My dad had 5 children, and he actually put his house up as collateral to buy this business. You know, when people ask you, would I be willing to take that chance, knowing that I had 5 kids and going into a new business that I really didn't know about? And that was a big risk for my dad. So I think that that's one thing that I really, really respect him for, that he took that chance.
I remember coming to church with my mom every Sunday. My mom was really involved with the church and with all the different societies. The one that sticks out is the Madonna del Lume. We used to have a procession all the way to the wharf on the Madonna del Lume around the beginning of October.
We're very happy to have established that as a tradition. Like I said, we're going on 87 years almost at the Madonna del Lume. We're going to continue that tradition as long as most of us are still here, and our kids and our grandkids continue to pass that along.
Getting back to the old days, which I'll never trade, I figured it out at this age that life is full of mysteries and events.
And so we're back. That last gentleman, John Mangiapane, so our director and editor for this series is his son, Italian American. His dad, of course, was a fisherman, still involved, still mends nets and does the work. So very proud to be a part of this and putting this documentary series together. We're in production for the first episode on the church. So we're raising the funds for it, and so we're off and running. We've gone on a very quick, very brief journey through the neighborhood. I've tried to give you an overview as best I could. Hopefully you enjoyed it. There's so much more, of course, history in the neighborhood to discuss. But as Walter Cronkite used to say, that's the way it is. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you again to Dean, to Janet, to all of you at Soho for having me. It was a privilege to be here with you and to discuss the Little Italy neighborhood. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. I love the different things that each author brings to this series every month. I don't think we've had any videos before, and that was really interesting. And I
wasn't sure how it was going to go, so I'm like, I hope this works. I
want to see the whole series now, and I'd love to hang out with Lou and Danny.
Yeah, they're great. They're
like a
they're
lot of
characters.
fun.
Yeah.
All right. And I neglected to say at the beginning that if anybody has any questions, please type them into either the chat or the question and answer feature. And we've got a compliment, excellent presentation. Enjoyed learning about the Italian community.
Thank
you. You see, where did
anybody discuss my hands, Dean? Any problem?
No, I don't think
I
so.
did apologize for it at the beginning. I'm sure they were
noticed that. Where did the fishing industry go? Was it because the fish stocks were depleted?
Yeah, largely because tuna, it was cheaper to get it from Japan. The imports were cheaper. That was one factor. The environmental regulations, there was the dolphin issue, and governmental restrictions. And so those three things combined started again, it was the beginning of the end. Now, the Italians developed seiners and super seiners, so they were able to go further in waters and go farther, go out months. So we started with the small bait boats, but the super seiners with the big winches and the nets that were automated, the technological advances really took the boats out further. So they were able to continue fishing into the 70s. But again, it was largely environmental stuff, import stuff, and then it just kind of died out, and sport fishing kind of took over, which again, we still have. Those are really the factors behind it.
What is the address of the Convivio Center? You mentioned a coffee bar. Is it open to the public?
Yes, I had one more screen with our website, but I'll give it to you. So we are on Date Street, so one block up on Date and Union. So if you know where the Our Lady of the Rosary is, it's just one block up. You're going to see the bocce courts and you're going to see the dog park. So if you Google it, it'll be 250 West Date Street. And we're open Thursday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. The coffee bar is open. And when we have our events and programs, they're usually in the evening, on the weekends. We have a calendar of events on our website, which I'll share with you when we finish up. Thank you.
Another comment. Thank you all for your preservation efforts, especially the interviews and conversations with longtime residents, the heart of Little Italy.
That's nice. Thank you.
And
we're doing our best.
Janet has put the address and information up
Oh,
on
good.
in the webinar chat if anybody would like to see that written out.
I guess I can mention our web is conviviosociety.org, CONVIVIO society.org, and you can find all the information there.
Hey, would love to know more about the significant Italian families of the time and those who influenced development of Greater San Diego. That is Alessios, is it Gios or Gios?
Gios, Lesios, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Big names, Alessio, Gios, Zolezzi, Castagnola, in and out of the fishing industry and retail. DeFalco's, big retailers. DeFalco's eventually became Vaughn's. That was the precursor. They were located right there on India Street. My grandfather worked for DeFalco's back in the day. We had a macaroni factory on Kettner. My mom worked there when she first came to San Diego. It's no longer there, but there's a little plaque on the sidewalk on Kettner Boulevard. The Gios, the Brigantes, another important family. The cottages next to Mona Lisa is where we'll be developing the new cultural center and museum. A prominent business family has donated use of the property. Now those 7 cottages, again, if you're familiar with the area, Hawthorne in India, were built by James Briganti. And his grandson was a docent of ours for many, many years. He was a docent for the Maritime Museum, did his own talks around town. We miss him dearly. And his grandfather was so prominent in our community, another great leader. He served on the Bank of Italy's board. A.P. Giannini founded the Bank of Italy in San Francisco, which later became Bank of America. So huge connection. They called him the father of the Italian colony, his grandfather Briganti. And Mama Briganti of St. Anthony's Fish Grotto fame. You know, she was the matriarch, and she carried that business through decades. Unfortunately, it's gone now. But first, another personal story, on Sundays, my family would go to Anthony's Fish Grotto for fish. That was an outing for us. So many names, so many stories. That's what we're trying to do with our archival sites, document preservation, oral histories, trying to save that history. Again, as all of you know here at Soho, to know where you're going, you got to know where you've been, and that's what we're trying to do for the Italians in San Diego, to benefit everyone, everyone in our city, America's finest city. There's a huge story here to be shared.
Great. Would Tom be interested in any old photos from the Italian community from the 1930s and 40s? I thought you probably would.
A resounding yes. We're
it's
constantly looking for things. Yes.
My grandfather, Cesare Maddalena, arranged for the church to buy the land where the church is located.
Yes. Great. Fantastic. I love it. Confetti for Gino Maddalena?
I'm sorry?
My comment was there was a book, Confetti for Gino.
Oh.
So I think it's the same. It has to be the same family. So definitely.
I guess this attendee can just reach out to me and
Perfect.
I'll pass the information along
That's
to you.
great.
Oh, my Uncle Larry, she said.
Yes. Yeah. That's fantastic. We're looking. I haven't had any success with that, but that'd be great. Yes.
Great. If anybody has any other questions, please put them in the chat or question and answer. I'm checking both places. We'll give a couple more minutes. Okay, we're back. All right.
Definitely stop by, come see us, have a cup of coffee. We can chat. Check out our calendar of events. We do a lot of different things, as I mentioned. And anybody that has any connections to any historical artifacts, please let us know.
Right. Well, it looks like we've answered all the questions, and That was a great presentation. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Tom.
Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Thank you again.
And I want to thank our audience for attending today. Be sure to visit sohosandiego.org to sign up for next month's Penning the Past if you haven't already done so. Our topic for October 12 is Mission Hills with Alan Hazard and Janet O'Day. And I'd like to thank Janet once again for her volunteer work behind the scenes on Penning the Past. And be sure to join us on December 1st at the Marston House Museum Shop for Museum Store Sunday, when several of the authors whose lectures you've enjoyed this year will be on hand to sign copies of their books. And you can either purchase their books here in the shop, or if you have them already, just bring them in and you're welcome to bring them and have them signed. And we look forward to seeing you then. And thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all again. Appreciate it.